Minerals can often be overlooked when you're making your ration, but they are just as important as energy and protein. Minerals and vitamins are both really important for bone density, muscle function, nerve function, as well as tons of other functions in the body. But they're often overlooked because they're so confusing. My name is Adrienne Good, and I'm a livestock and feed extension specialist with the Ministry of Agriculture. And we're going to talk about mineral formulations in this video, between loose minerals, tubs, chelated, non-chelated, salt blocks, pre-mixed supplements, pellets. There's so many different formulations out there. It can be hard to decide which one is going to work best on your operation, and there is no one-size-fits-all answer to give you a good, solid, just do this. So let's talk about some of the differences. We're going to start with inorganic minerals versus chelated minerals. So a really simple way to think of this is inorganic is the stuff that's just naturally found in earth. It comes from rocks. So if you're looking at an inorganic mineral, it will have things like carbonate or sulfate in it. Chelated is not naturally found in earth. Chelated is bound to an amino acid or a protein or a carbohydrate carrier, and that helps the animal absorb it more. There are pros and cons to both inorganic and chelated minerals. Inorganics are a lot cheaper, but they aren't quite as available to the animal for absorption. Chelated are a little more expensive, but they're a little more available. So what's the best answer for your operation? Well, again, it depends. Chelated minerals, like I said, are absorbed better. So if you really want to make sure those minerals are getting into your livestock, use a chelated mineral. If you want to save a little bit of money, inorganic minerals, a lot of the time, will meet your animal's needs. If you're in times of high stress, like freshly weaned calves or calving out your cows, you might want to add a chelated just to help out those really stressed animals. Or if you're in a situation where you have a lot of antagonists in your diet, things like high sulfate water, you might want to add a chelate just to help make sure those minerals are getting in there with the antagonists that are going to stop their absorption. So that's our chelated versus inorganic minerals, but what's the difference between loose and tubs? Well, once again, there are many pros and cons to both options, and there isn't one really good option that will check off every box on your list. Loose minerals are often the cheapest option. They're also a little bit more work. You have to make sure they don't get weatherized, and you're usually going to take out more mineral than take it out more often. However, pros are you can force feed it, so that means mixing it with your ration or even a grain source, so they're getting hopefully the right amount of mineral as long as they're eating the right amount of feed. It's also easier to control intake because you can mix it with salt and change the amount of salt you're mixing it with to change how fast they're eating it. Lick tubs, on the other hand, are kind of like the gummy vitamins of the cow world. They're really sweet. Cattle really like to eat them. They also often sometimes contain things like protein, energy, and potentially other add-ins. Cons are, because they're so sweet, you might get a few cows that just camp out here and lick on them and nobody else gets any minerals, so it's a lot harder to control consumption. Another con is they're pretty stinking heavy, so it's a bit of a safety risk to get them out there by yourself unless you have necessary equipment. So that's a real brief overview of loose versus tub minerals. A really good common question that we get is, what about those tubs with all the extras in it? Or what about the loose mineral with all the extra in it? Or what about the fancy salt blocks or anything like that? There's all sorts of additives out there, and they all play a different role, and they can be useful in times. However, I would say just check with your nutritionist, check with your local livestock and feed extension specialist before you feed of it. Some of them might work, some of them might not be super helpful, so just check in with some experts to really see if it's going to be a benefit to your operation. The world of mineral formulations, even just choosing a loose versus a tub versus a block, can be really complicated. Luckily, we have livestock and feed extension specialists throughout the province to help. For help finding your local livestock and feed extension specialist, contact the Agriculture Knowledge Centre.